was trying to connect these two thoughts because with the tariffs, now I was talking to another person and like if there was really these food shortages coming up, especially with rice, then these countries would not export their rice because they would need to keep it in. But then if all these big countries were not exporting rice because they needed to keep it in because they're growing so short, that would spook the rest of the grain markets. So what's the perfect excuse that came up? So if people didn't export, then it wouldn't even blink an eye. The tariffs. It's the perfect excuse so nobody will look deeper into it until it's too late.
Welcome, Eagles, to another edition of Tradcat Night Special Guest Exclusive Podcast. Look what the wind blew in. We've got David Dubine from Adapt 2030 returning to the program as we're getting ready for the fall. He's been living out in the woods amongst the squirrels and forest people, and he is returning to reset himself and get himself back onto the show. And man, since the last time we talked, all kinds of great earth changes happening. Maybe we should start with probably the biggest of them all, the mega thrust earthquake, sixth biggest quake, 8.8, that some are saying has completely reset the West Coast, the subduction, Cascadia subduction zone. Ever since that, really, there's been smaller cycles of quakes out there in the Southern California area, but then the New Madrid area too as well, and then the East Coast too, New York City area getting a couple. I think they had like 3 earthquakes or 2 or 3 earthquakes in a 3-day period. Break down what you were seeing there.
Well, seems like the top couple of miles of our crust seems to be affected by more cosmic rays. Now we're looking at a solar system-wide event here. Now you're just looking at the sun as its own driver. Magnetic field, our Earth's magnetic field continues to decline. But if nobody's been following the news, we have 2 naked eye novas in our skies. So what that means is a micronova from a different star far away from our place, 100 light years away, 200 light years away, 50 light years away. You know, we're talking some distance away from our local star right here. But 2 of them are now visible in our skies. One is enough to trigger the ancient Chinese into looking for, it wasn't such earth changes as it was human changes, but they knew that there was some correlation between madness, and I'm talking about psychosis in a society when they saw one of those, well, they call them transient stars, or like visitor star, the Cushing, like a visitor. But there's 2 of them now. And when the light arrives, you know, you got the protons coming in and the photons and whatnot. You can see those. The light arrives, and so does the energy from that at the same time. But those galactic cosmic rays cause more earthquakes, and they cause magma chambers to behave strangely and differently. So when we start to look out at that, all right, we got 2 of those micronovas that are hitting our planet with extra cosmic rays. We know we got a weakened magnetic field, so even though we're at solar maximum, that double input is having an effect. Then we start to see all these record floods across the planet. So I am looking at the correlation of the extragalactic cosmic rays bombarding an atmosphere that's already full of moisture vapor from the Hunga Tonga eruption, causing even more cascading muons to create cloud droplets, and this is why we're seeing more floods. Now, how long will these naked eye novas last? Not exactly sure. They could be anywhere from, weeks to months. But as long as that light is visible, that means that the energies are here. When you're looking at light, it's traveling at a certain speed along with the different, let's say, energetic particles with it. And we'll just call those cosmic rays. So once you start to see the light, that means the energy has arrived. But also when the light stops, it means it has swept past us, or that emanation point of the energy has dissipated to the point that it's not visible light any longer. So then once it turns off, literally. So I'm saying that these 2 are definitely related to everything we're seeing in terms of more earthquakes, these earth cracks happening across the planet, bridges ripping apart, got the pipelines cracking everywhere, micro zones or faults, for a better term. Even in Tennessee, we had a 4.0 down here. Like a lot of these are triggering right now. But that earthquake you mentioned off Kamchatka Peninsula, I don't know really how much of an effect it's going to have to readjust actual crustal plates, because it only moved like maybe say 30 feet. Well, 30 feet you're talking how many thousands and tens of thousands of miles along these plate boundaries. So 30 feet along 50,000 miles of plate boundary, I really don't see how much of a resetting effect that would have. Yeah, there's something going on here with the cosmic rays in the cloud cover. Now, once we come off solar maximum here, which we're at now, descending quickly off of that. Once we come down into the solar minimum and we get hit with more cosmic rays, oh my, the earthquakes are going to increase. The volcanoes are going to start chugging. And perhaps this is where that feedback loop gets in on itself, where more cosmic rays create more cloud particles, but there's more, say, dust in the atmosphere that creates more cloud droplets, and you get into that feedback loop until we come back into a solar maximum phase sometime in the future.
Yeah, we got Dr. Valentina Zarkova. I'm not sure if you ever interviewed her yet. Yeah. She's been doing a show now for a little bit, and she's coming back on next month. We'll get her.
Oh, nice. Yeah, she's got a bunch of updated information, too. You know, they tried very strongly to vilify her, and I'm sure she had some death threats because she just dropped out for a while, and she's back with some new information. And it's valid. Her information's valid. Some of her modeling with the double dynamo in the sun and the different layerings. See, so put this in perspective. You think the governments of the world just want to reset the economy right now because it's like Tuesday and they woke up and like, wow, great, let's just reset the economy this week. There's a purpose behind the resetting the economy, and the purpose of resetting humanity. It's not because they want to, it's because they have to. There's an inbound event of certain magnitude and imminence in it that's requiring them to make these moves that they would never otherwise make.
When we were talking off air, just some thoughts about this reset here too. It's not that I've said definitively that it would happen this year, but I thought at the beginning of the year, I seemed pretty certain that it would happen by the Day of Atonement. These guys, they work off of the Jewish calendar there, and kind of follow their way of thinking. That's when the reset is done on the Day of Atonement. So this year would be October the 1st. That's why I said, things would really have to pick up here in September, which I'm leaning towards what David will argue that's probably not going to happen this year, or I think David might even be stronger than that. They got to build up crypto a little bit more. But then I gave you my last article in discussing this next 2 years in 2026 and 2027 with the Day of Atonement. I think next year it's like September the 20th. And then the 2027, I think is October the 10th or something like that. So basically it's like mid-September through mid-October usually with this. So could be as far back as 2027. I'm certainly open to that. A lot would have to happen over the next 2 to 3 weeks for me to really, to think that it might happen this year. But paint the case here, what you were telling me off air about, the need to build up crypto some more and why you believe the stock market crash will not happen over the next month or two.
Stock market total crash down to eclipse in like parabolic declines down where you're wiping out 90% of people's savings? Perhaps not. But October 1st, you mentioned that does kind of coincide with the regular 4-year cycle top in crypto. Not financial advice. It's just if you can open your eye just even a sliver and look out at the forecast of where crypto's running to, it seems a lot of people are pointing to Bitcoin around 200,000 or 180,000, peaking somewhere around October 1st, right in that last week of September, first week of October-ish, somewhere in there. Seems to be a lot of cycle peak top forecasts. It's late and maybe further out into middle October, but that seems to where it peaked. That's a 4-year cycle, and from there it generally drops off. So if there were going to be some sort of what you just described, perhaps there will be the cycle peak, and then that will be that Day of Atonement. That'll be the decline. That will be what you're describing.
Now, another thing to look at too, Mary Jackson, one of my followers, also emailed me the other day, reminding me too that the government fiscal year ends September the 30th. I think the day before. So I would think that if the script does run out this year over next month or whatever it is, that we'll probably see a lot of talk of government shutdown too. Which, I mean, they kind of do it every year, though. So I don't know. I don't even know if I want to say that because it's almost every year they talk about that, don't they? About this time of year. The government might shut down. You might not get your Social Security checks. You might not get this or that. So I don't know. Maybe I want to withdraw that statement. But, yeah, the government fiscal year ends September the 30th.
That runs contrary to our deal maker in chief here, that would not be possible under his watch because everything's so good and it's huge and everything is running and the tariffs and we got all this growing economy. So it's impossible the government would shut down.
Inflation is 2%. That's the biggest joke, man. When they released that latest inflation number, I was rolling laughing. I was like, does anyone really believe this stuff? And then I think he had to fire one of their top guys for fake data on that stuff because no one was believing it. Does anyone really think that inflation's around like 3% or something like that? I'm like, I was joking around, David, because I know we haven't talked in a while. Like this is about a month or so ago, and every once in a while, when my doggos, when my Frenchies are really good, I like to go out and get them some basic hamburgers or what. And I went through the Arby's line. I was like, give me a 3 plain hamburgers for my dog or whatnot. And they said like $26. I said, what is $8 in something for a plain hamburger? And like, we're not talking like a restaurant kind of hamburger, although I would say Arby's might be like a little bit of an upgrade from McDonald's or something like that. But I mean, everything's going up in prices, maybe with the exception of eggs that's come down. I certainly have noticed that, but across the board, 3% is ridiculous, and no one's buying it. There was an article that came out locally here last night that the Pittsburgh area where I'm at, Pittsburgh's about an hour east of me, it is like in the top 3 in regards to highest grocery prices in the country. A lot of Pittsburgh people not happy about that. But go ahead, David. I mean, what's your thoughts where we're at inflation wise, and how are we doing on tariffs, the Trump tariffs?
Seems to be discombobulated. Maybe that's the purpose, is to keep everybody off guard, but it just seems to be flabbergasting everything. You wake up one morning and everything's changed overnight because of a tweet or something. But average ground beef prices right now, I just did a story on this the other day. This is from the United States Department of Agriculture. Ground beef prices average U.S. right now, $9.62 per pound. Now, I remember when I was a kid, you would get it for 78 cents a pound, and if it came around for, Independence Day or something, you could get that in the summer months on barbecue season for, supermarkets be running specials for like 55 cents, 60 cents a pound just to get it out the door. That was back then. This is now. So even if it was $1 a pound, you look at it at 10x. Hey, but let me draw. I'd written a cycle of 7 notes. So go back to the Days of Atonement. If you're looking at these resolving of debts, or removing debt down to 0 again at certain frequencies, they're based on cycles of 7. If we're looking at this Day of Atonement coming up October 1st, I mean, where does it sit in the cycles of 7? Because it works on 7s. 7 cycles of 7 is 49 years plus the 1, and they're 50-year cycles within encapsulated. But those 50-year cycles stretch out into much longer times as well. So 7 times 5, 350 years, that'll be another subset cycle. And then, when you come to this 335 and 35 is what? And then, you start to get into these longer duration cycles of, 700-year cycles, 1,400-year cycles. So where do we really sit on this 7-year cycle in it? Because it'll give you a gauge as to the magnitude of the leveling of books on a ledger. For those out there looking for some glimpses into the future, I don't have the answer. That's the reason I wrote it. I would like to do some of my own research on it and see where we sit. So if it's a full bevy of a cycle of 7 sevens and it falls on that 49th year into the 50th year, that's when there's a great amount of, let's say, redistribution on the ledgers compared to just in the middle, and it might be the 3rd year of 7 or something. You're looking at this. But food costs are going to continue to increase, although I did see USDA had said there's quite a bit of corn and quite a bit of soybean this year. Now, I used AI to ask it, all right, AI, I used 3 different ways, Notebook LM, Grok, and ChatGPT. So I went through all 3 and just put the same thing. Go into a country, and rice-producing country, and tell me in the local news articles where they're talking about 10% losses in the local crop or greater. And it was just too large, and I was like, all right, let's narrow it down. 20% losses or greater, and that really shrunk my information load down. So I went through Indonesia, and I went through each individual island. I went through the percentage loss of this region of the country total whole. And I went up to India, and I went up to China, and I went up to Myanmar and Thailand, anywhere they do rice. That's a major exporter. 10% down rice crop across the globe. Now, corn seems to be flourishing. Beans seem to be flourishing. Wheat is struggling, especially in Europe. Wheat prices across the globe are set to rise, and rice prices across the globe are set to skyrocket. But if you're looking at more developed and developing nations, if you want to split it into those 2 categories, Okay, the developed ED nations, more like Europe, United States, etc., that's more of a wheat-based kind of thing. But when you come into developing nations, when you're talking about, Southeast Asia, Pakistan, these kind of places, a lot of that base, what you consider foods groups in the country, just the base grain is rice. So a larger increase in rice prices would have a significantly larger impact on developing nations. Now, Africa, predominantly corn, of course, but they got to import it from somewhere. So then you start to look at the cost for imports, and by the time it gets over to Africa from elsewhere, it's going to cost more. And African inflation is just ridiculous. That you're running off the charts. So they're like hundreds of percent per year, like into the not Zimbabwe type, but almost everywhere in Africa, food inflation is between 30 and 100% per year now. I'm like, whoa, how do they handle that when we in America couldn't handle that? So you start to look at just the base crops that are consumed around the world, and you can start to see significant possibilities of social disruption in areas where rice is consumed, where they have the highest expenditure on food per month of their total base salary. And then you start to look at, okay, well, which regions would flare off first? Pakistan would be a high, right up at the top of the list there. So you start to look around the world, rice is going to take a major hit. Not financial advice. I just used, and here's the funny thing is, then like USDA came out, 3 months later and said, oh yeah, the rice is not really doing as well as forecast. You can use AI to your benefit for things like crop forecasting and be months and months and months ahead of where we sit with our USDA.
Yeah, very, very, very volatile times in regards to production, and then also the ability to get our imports. I mean, there's a lot to consider, whether it's, to wars and skirmishes, more of these insane laws popping up, natural disasters happening more frequently, especially flooding, man. I mean, flooding's just been off the charts. We had a major flood 30 minutes south of me since the last time we talked, and it was like a dozen people died. That's 30 minutes south of me. I dated a girl from that area, Wheeling, West Virginia. In addition to that, you got to take into consideration labor and all that kind of stuff. Remember, we were talking port strikes shortly before the elections there. I'm sure we're going to be seeing that down the road. Then the Trump tariff kind of situation, as more and more of the BRICS nations are just trying to move away from the dollar and just say, hey, we're going to do our thing.
I was trying to connect these two thoughts because with the tariffs, now I was talking to another person, and like, if there was really these food shortages coming up, especially with rice, then these countries would not export their rice because they would need to keep it in. But then if all these big countries were not exporting rice because they needed to keep it in because they're growing so short, that would spook the rest of the grain markets. So what's the perfect excuse that came up? So if people didn't export, then it wouldn't even blink an eye. The tariffs. So if they stop exporting, that's no problem because there's all these kind of country competition, the BRICS thing you just mentioned. So if they stop exporting, nobody's going to even take that as a, wow, is that because they don't have enough production? We'll just go, oh, it's a tariff thing. Oh, it's the BRICS thing. It's the perfect excuse, so nobody will look deeper into it until it's too late.
One thing we should have mentioned when we were talking our earth changes back there, what's the latest update here with Hurricane Aaron? I know it went from like a 1 to a 5, like really quick, and then everyone really got rattled, and it kind of scaled back. And
the dirty storm, because it's pulled so much dust off of Africa with it that it's creating a vortice of dust through the part of our atmosphere from Africa all the way to the East Coast. Is dragging this dust with it in the circulation. Now, see, here's the thing that doesn't make sense. Normally that stops formation of cyclones or cyclonic hurricanes, these sort of thing. This is actually doing something that it's not supposed to do in physics. So to drag an entire dust cloud coming off of Africa with it, at the same time, that dust is supposed to repel and stop formations of these tropical systems. It just doesn't make sense why it caused it to amplify. By the way, that storm stopped for like 12 hours in place, and then it amplified to that category 5. Then it started moving again, then it dropped down to category 2. So that was another anomaly too. Like, how does it just stop for 12 hours in the exact position? Didn't move but like 1 or 2 miles over 12 hours. And then it amplified to the category 5, whoosh, and then it started moving again. But it stopped in place for nearly 12 hours. So it should have been 200 miles movement by that point, but it stopped pretty much nothing.
Yeah, be careful when you go out shopping. I try to give people some of the latest major recalls. I'm sure you saw this one too. Radioactive shrimp coming out of Walmart, hitting various states. I want to say it was around a dozen states, one of which is right here in Ohio. But no surprise, again, I that Great Value, I guess it's Walmart's generic brand, man. I don't buy any.
Where do you get radioactive shrimp? Like, how does that happen?
Your Fukushima fish. Stay away from anything, I guess, over the east, I guess. But check that. Don't want to turn into. Don't want to have Godzilla breath. Remember when Godzilla used to suck in the radioactive and he would have his breath. You don't want that radioactive breath from the Great Value shrimp.
Where there's been a lot of E. coli and different kind of contaminant of the regular, just make your stomach sick kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, listeria. Oh yeah, all kinds of stuff happen.
And the tick, now they're really pushing the tick thing, that if you get bit by a tick, it'll make you allergic to meat.
Yeah, they're saying a new invasive species came in through like the Northeast, and it's even hitting some portions of Ohio. I forget what it's called now. Some what is it called? Deer horn tick or something.
They probably bred those out and dropped them by airplanes.
Or those, what are those worms, the screw worms coming down from I guess they're like Mexico or something, Texas.
The obvious question, are you on shrooms? Illuminated shrooms, combining 6 powerful mycelium in a Fulvic Mineral delivery system, selected for their synergistic, restorative, and protective actions. Potent organic extracts of Cordyceps for stamina, lion mane for cognition, Reishi for longevity, Chaga for detoxification, Agaricus for resistance, nutrient-rich turkey tail. A new standard and excellent illuminated shrooms from Alfa Vedic. And please remember, ladies and gentlemen, every purchase you make helps keep this podcast on air, bringing information just like this, because we're at this critical juncture right now in our civilization, our society. We need to share information more than ever. We need more solutions than ever. And sponsors like Alfa Vedic keeping us on air just like this, your support to them helps support us, because we need to go through this together. And the more discussion and the more solutions, the easier it's going to be. So please remember, that link's in the description box below. And are you shrooming? We're down in Texas and stuff. Yeah. Can you believe it? I don't even know what to believe anymore, what's real. That could be just made up to reduce our cattle herds and cause the price of beef to go up. Because I talked to the cattle rancher. We had a really good interview with a one-horse farmer, and he has about 8 head, but his friends got like 300 head, and there's a bunch of people running like 3 to 700 head around there, all local farmers. And he was saying that screw worm has not hit any of them, and they were wondering the same thing. Like, is it just made up in the news? Because they're not having a problem with it, but they look on the news, and suddenly there's supposedly this worm everywhere, where they have never seen it, contacted, or even know anybody that's had contact with it or had a problem with it, and they're in the ranching industry. So I'm like, really, you don't know anybody down there that's had a problem on their farms with this? And they're like, no, not yet.
Oh, I totally see that happen for sure. I would definitely see that's what's happening there in that situation. Get the meat prices going. Self-reliance tip for the month. What's hot on your presses?
If you're working outside, you're going to get a lot of poison ivy, poison oak, insect bites, etc. So down here, the Cherokee use this stuff called jewel. Like jewelry, Jewel weed, jewel weed. It has a real bright kind of yellow and orange flower to it. You mix that with tobacco, and you can put it in whatever cream you have or beeswax or whatever, and then you just wipe a little bit of that on. And I tell you what, the poison ivy goes away. I wouldn't say like immediately within an hour or two, but the itching stops and never itches again, and within a day or so it dries out and it goes away. Now this is an old Cherokee remedy for these kind of like really nasty biting insects. And you got the red bugs down here. They leave this welt that kind of oozes for a few days because they bite into the skin, and then they inject this, I don't know, something that causes it to continuously run for a few days. I didn't know that, because the first time I got into this tall patch of grass, I came out and I was like, man, I saw this thing. It was pretty cool. It was like this beautiful red. It looked like a spider, but it wasn't. And they go, no way, you got into a red bug nest. Dude, go take a shower immediately, as hot as you can. And I still got bitten by like 30 times. It was the most painful thing. I had to like get prednisone and put like socks on my hands because it was going to itch so much so I wouldn't itch myself in my sleep. I had to actually go to sleep wearing socks over my hands. Now, that jewelweed tobacco mix knocks that right out. So know your local flowers too. And wild foraging, coming into autumn, it's going to be a bunch of nuts coming down too, like acorns, a popular one if you know how to do the acorn bread, and then hickory nuts.
With the acorns and the nuts, is there a certain way like you have to do it? Like you can't, can you just like pick it off the tree and eat it, or do you have to like boil it?
Yeah, oh, it's so bitter. Oh my gosh, I don't think you could do that. Tannin would probably upset your stomach off of that.
Really? Okay, because I've never done that before. I'm just wondering, like, what's the proper way of processing any like nut?
Well, we tried to make acorn bread a couple times. We didn't have good success with it, but I'm saying it's possible because they used to eat it all the time in the old days. You got to soak the acorns in water for 3 days. You like soak them. You got to rinse out the water because the tannins come out in the water. Generally, they keep it in some kind of net bag and just like submerge it. And it takes like 3 days to go through the water process. And then you need to heat them up and toast them, and then you need to chip them into pieces, and then you finally can do something to make bread with it after that.
Because we're noted here in Ohio, I'm sure you're familiar with the school, but the football team, Ohio State Buckeyes. We got the Buckeye everywhere.
Sure, that's another nutritious food as well. And then wherever you are, it's going to be nut season. And late gourds are coming out. All the pumpkins are coming out. All these types of like harder gourds. That's this season coming up as we get into September here. And you can grow a second crop of what you consider lettuces that like cooler weather, spinaches that like cooler weather. That all stuff you can do in September, at least down here. We're in a different growing. I'm down here at 7B, and you're higher up there, so maybe your growing season's not as extended as ours. But think about second garden plantings, think about wild foraging, and like you should definitely know what nuts are coming down because we are going to have a huge amount of walnuts are here. There's a whole bunch of things up in our forest that we try to make a map and go around and pick it up, but the animals will beat you to it every time. You know what I mean? You got to be out early and on it all the time. Maybe even a couple times a day, walk through the forest and pick them up. Like you're not going to go up and get 50 pounds of like acorns or 50 pounds of walnut in one go, especially the good ones, because animals are there too waiting.
Right. Yeah, and they're there first, right? They're there 24/7. Yeah, they got their bags all ready to go. Oh man, I tell you, it's just I don't know. If you're not having fun in this line of work, I don't know what you're doing because it's just the headlines I see on a day-to-day basis are just wild. But yeah, eat some radioactive shrimp as the motherships are landing. Just in time for Thanksgiving, as I said.
Radioactive shrimp appetizer sounds good with a UFO cloud. Get me a table.
With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Civilization Cycle. And thank you for all the support.